Alright, so I was roving through these different forums and I met something that confirmed one of the videos that I was talking about, and I wanted to discuss weight and frame. Weight and frame. But let me just go into what I saw on this forum here. In this post on this forum dated April 19th, 2013 at 1:20 a.m., this person preceded what I was talking about when I talked about little fighters, true little fighters. Okay, there's a difference between big guys who shrink down to lower weight classes and dominate, and little guys who move up into bigger weight classes. There's a big difference, and I'm about to really discriminate between that. So let's get into it. So this was a thread based on a post that said, you know what's funny? The 140 pounders are all bigger than the top 147 pounders. Remember, this is back in 2013. So some of these guys are now welterweights, okay? Hectari said, it's funny to me. Keith Thurman made a great point. He said that most of these guys at 147 are not true welterweights. He said Floyd, Marquez, and Pacquiao are all small guys who moved up from small weights, and they are considered the top 147 pounders. Pac, Floyd, and JMM also don't weigh more than 150 pounds on fight night, and don't even cut weight. Now, you know I have made a video on this, talking about that Floyd, Pacquiao, and Marquez are actually small 147 pounders. In fact, they're not even 147 pounders. They're more 140 pounders. And I also made a point to tell people and predict that I think that on fight night, when Floyd fights Pacquiao, Pacquiao's actually going to come in heavier than Floyd. Guess what? That actually happened. Though you didn't see Floyd's weight on the unofficial weight on fight night on television, the Nevada State Athletic Commission weighed Floyd Mayweather Jr. the afternoon of the fight, not the night, but the afternoon, and he weighed in on the scales at 149 pounds. Guess what Manny Pacquiao weighed? Well, everybody knows, 152 pounds. So Floyd's even smaller than Pacquiao in terms of frame. Pacquiao's frame can actually take more weight than Floyd's can. But what's interesting to me is this. Hectari says, all these guys are much bigger than Floyd, Pacquiao, JMM, and cut a lot of weight to make the smaller weight. In other words, we're going to talk about 140 pounders at the time in 2013. I know some of them are now welterweights, okay? Mike Alvarado, he's 5'10". He walks around at 170 pounds. Let me use the arrow. 5'9" Brandon Rios walks around at 185 pounds. 5'9" Danny Garcia, around 160 plus pounds, and admits to being a big 140 pounder that might move to 147 pounds soon. And he's going to have his fight with Paulie Malignaggi very soon. 5'10" Victor Ortiz walks around at 170 pounds. 5'8" Marcos Maidana, a huge puncher, walks around at 160s. 5'6" Lucas Matita is short but has heavy bones and walks around at 160. 5'8" Devin Alexander walks around at 165 to 170 pounds. According to his trainer, Kevin Cunningham, Devin had to really struggle to make 140, coming in down from the high 160s. 5'5" Timothy Bradley walks around at 170. 5'6" Ruslan Provodnik, short and stocky, walks around at 155. And 5'10" Robert Guerrero skips 140. Actually, Robert Guerrero said on tape that he walks around 155 pounds, 160 pounds. And Andre Berto, we know he walks around about 170, 165 pounds. Okay. Now, some of these guys are now at welterweight, but the point is, these were 140 pounders. And Floyd and Pacquiao and JMM, Juan Manuel Marquez, these guys are actually smaller than them. So they're smaller guys than 140 pounders. Okay? Now, why am I making this point? Because it has to do with your frame. When you think of Timothy Bradley, Sean Porter, Terrence Crawford, these guys are all bigger than Floyd, Manny, and Juan Manuel Marquez. They're bigger guys, okay? Sean Porter, he come all the way down from 185 pounds. This guy used to play college football, and he was a 185 pounder, and he shrank all the way down. Just recently, he fought a catch weight of 144 pounds, but he shrinks all the way down to 147 pounds. And look at guys like Timothy Bradley, who walk around solid right now at probably 180 pounds. Now, they usually say these guys balloon up to these weights, but no, this is their natural weight. This is what they naturally walk around at, but they lose all this weight to fight at a certain weight class. Now, let me give you an example of other guys like that. Roberto Duran in history. He walked around just like Marcos Maidana at around 160, 170 pounds, even though he was fighting at a tiny weight of 135 pounds, which is why it was easy for Roberto Duran to move from lightweight to welterweight. In fact, in his first fight at welterweight, he fought at 142 pounds against a guy called Adolfo Villaret. And then he moved from welterweight, he jumped all the way up to super welterweight and fought a super welterweight fight at 151 pounds against Ezequiel Obando. And the reason he could have done that, and actually was easier for him to make those weights, was because he actually walked around much heavier. In fact, like Marcos Maidana, he walked around at 160, 170 pounds. All right? And later on in his career, this dude, after fighting, now he fought 8 fights before he fought Sugar Ray Leonard. So he fought 8 fights at welterweight and super welterweight, okay? Where after he beat Sugar Ray Leonard, this dude was walking around at 190 to 217 pounds. Now, just so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about, I am 6 feet tall. I walk around between 164 to 170 pounds, right? And I have to diet. I really have to diet to be that weight. And I'm filled out. I'm about 40 years old, okay? But my fighting weight is 154 pounds. That's where I'm most effective. I'm going to talk about some other guys that you guys call great little guys, but they're not really. Guys like Sam Langford. Okay, Sam Langford beat the lightweight champion of the world, but Sam Langford was a big dude. He was a middleweight. He walked around at 160, 175 at the time. And in the middle to late parts of his career, he was averaging between 180 to 200 plus pounds, just like Marcos Maidana and Roberto Duran in their careers. He fought Joe Gantz at 141 pounds, so he wasn't a lightweight. And let me just go into a couple things for you guys to understand certain things, right? Back in the day, we only had 8 divisions. So a division was actually a lot wider than it is today because of a subdivision. So if I was to talk about Sam Langford today, he basically fought what we call a junior welterweight fight. But that fight was at lightweight because the other guy was a lightweight. But really it should have been a welterweight fight back then as well. Okay? Because you go by the guy with the heavier weight. That's how you know what division you're in. And welterweight was anything above 135 pounds back then. So it's from 135 to 147. Okay? And of course, we're looking at what you weigh in on fight night. Okay? Today, junior welterweight bouts, guys weigh anything north of 140 to 160 pounds on fight night. When we talk about true little guys, I'll tell you the epitome of a true little guy. Henry Armstrong was a little guy. Okay? Henry Armstrong didn't go anywhere. He never ever made past 150 pounds. Henry Armstrong fought guys who were what we would call junior welterweights today. They weighed like 153 pounds. But those fights were actually called middleweight fights because it was anything north of 147 pounds, you were in middleweight. So Henry Armstrong was really a little guy. He was a real little guy, okay? He basically was Floyd and Pacquiao's size. He was like Juan Manuel Marquez size, okay? He was a little smaller than them, actually. So, but guys like Langford, it's still remarkable what they did, but they weren't really little guys in terms of their body frame. They were still little guys compared to who they fought. You know, like compared to a heavyweight, and you were middleweight, you were a little guy. Harry Kreb was a little guy. You know what I mean? He was fighting heavyweights. Now, the other thing about that is, when we talk about heavyweights back then, again, it's basically anybody who was heavier than 175 pounds. So, because the weight classes were so wide, when we talk about a heavyweight, we're really talking about dudes who were fit and they were about 175, 184 pounds. What we call light heavyweights today. And as you can see in front of you, some of the guys here that I mentioned actually come in at 170 plus pounds, right? So when we talk about size, you have to compare a lot of things, but mostly we're looking at frame. Can you carry that extra weight? You know, Tito Trinidad, that dude, Tito Trinidad was a middleweight. That's what I thought. But he started off at welterweight, and he could shrink into welterweight. So it's like a middleweight fighter fighting at welterweight. Jose Luis Castillo, he was a junior welterweight. There's a junior welterweight fighting at lightweight. You know what I mean? These are big frame, big bodied guys. In fact, this guy, Jose Luis Castillo, made it all the way up to super welterweight or junior middleweight. You know what I mean? He fought all the way up to there. So that tells you how big the dude is. So when we talk about weight, you have to actually look at the frame of the fighter. All right, some guys, they can start very small, like Pacquiao. He's not a true flyweight. You know what I mean? He started his career at flyweight, but he grew into what we know now today as a junior welterweight. He's basically a 140 pounder. That's what Manny Pacquiao really is. He'd be a big, strong 135 pounder. He could push his body to be a 135 pounder and just mow everybody over in 135. But really, his weight is really 140. Floyd's the same thing. And Marquez is the same thing. People talk about this guy did all of this. Oscar De La Hoya, you know, he came from super featherweight all the way up to middleweight. Yeah, but, you know, his frame, you got to look at the guy's frame. He began his career at super featherweight. That don't mean he's a super featherweight. You know, he can't make super featherweight now. You can't make Floyd become a super featherweight now. You know, you can't get Manny Pacquiao to be a flyweight now. That's kind of ridiculous. You know, they began their careers at that. That doesn't mean that they are that. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things in boxing that people don't understand, and I just thought I'd bring some clarity to it. You guys have a great one. As always, subscribe, invite people, share, like. You guys have a great one.